Wow. So Donald Trump just announced that Vivek and Elon Musk are going to be on the Department of Governmental Efficiency Department. I don't know, in other words, DOGE. Donald Trump calls this the Manhattan Project of our age, which is a throwback to the development of the atomic bomb. Remember the two bombs that were dropped on Japan? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is basically Donald Trump saying this is a groundbreaking, century blockbusting change of government function. Now, personally, I get it. We all look, we're like, government really efficient. I'm going to separate government efficiencies and inefficiencies and our opinions about government efficiencies and what we think about, the DMV and all that for a moment. And I'm going to go from a different angle. I'm going to go from the economist angle just for a moment. Let's say if we have a $6.5 trillion budget, as Donald Trump has referenced here, over 10 years, that means our government is spending $60 trillion. Let's now say that Vivek and Elon recommend, which they can recommend a lot of things, and they probably will. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump is going to implement all of those things. It's just sort of an advisory role. It's a title. It gets you, a reputation within the White House and within government. It's cool. But let's say they're able to eliminate 10%. I think they'll probably try to recommend a whole lot more. They'll probably, over the next 10 years, out of a 60.5, and the budget will go up too, right? At the end of 10 years, you'll probably be at like $100 trillion total budget, which is crazy for 10 years. Crazy to think about that. That's 6.5 per year times 10 with a lot of growth. It just keeps going up. So think about that for a moment. Let's say they eliminate 10% of that total, just to make it easy, 10 trill. Not all of that is going to be labor. Usually our payroll costs, when we think about contracting, are going to be about 50% for labor, 50% for material. This is how you know I'm in real estate, okay? How much is that paint job going to cost? $3,000 in paint. Call it $3K in labor. Add some Biden inflation in there. All right, maybe $4K labor. All right, fine. So in that case, you're talking about cutting $5 trillion of labor. Now, the velocity of money, not of savings, not of stock investments, but the velocity of money, of income that people receive, assuming, let's say, everybody that is getting cut works and unfortunately lives paycheck to paycheck, that means 50% or $5 trillion getting cut over a 10-year period times a velocity of money of 4 means we are cutting about $20 trillion. 5 times 4, that's because every dollar somebody earns and spends is worth about $4 to $5 of GDP in the economy, right? You spend $1, you spend it on a hot dog, that person goes and buys the material, that person hires people, they spend money, right? That's the velocity cycle. Anyway, if, again, 100 trillion over 10 years, you cut half of it, or half of 10% of it, that's 5 trillion. Velocity of money times 4. That means cutting the effective GDP impact of about $20 trillion over a 10-year period. That is the equivalent of cutting 1 full year of GDP out of the economy. Now, the thesis is, if the government runs leaner, and this is where it gets confusing, and then I gotta go bowling. You can actually step out for a second if you don't mind. Here, Lauren, you wanna come on out? All right. Take a look, by the way, at this awesome wrap we've got here. We got the beautiful, beautiful matte black wrap. Look at this. It is so sweet. Love this. Really like this a lot. But anyway, think about this. Oh, it's so awesome. Lauren, would you mind paying that little terminal here? So think about this for a moment. If you cut 1 year of GDP out, you're guaranteeing a recession. Unless, of course, you offset that via a lot of tax cuts. Because now the government needs to take in less money. And why did that open? I don't know why that opened. Oh, it's got like the little auto sensor that thinks I want it open. Okay, Elon. Anyway, If you can now offset that by collecting that much less money in taxes, and people spend the money that they're saving in taxes, then you can keep the economy going. So it could work. And my whole point of this is to say there are two things you have to consider here. It's not just cutting, but it's what happens after those cuts. Are you cutting and then reducing your taxes? Or are you taking that money and then just paying off government debt? Now, I'm not saying paying off government debt is a bad idea. You could do that, but that would be a lot more recessionary than cutting taxes. So best case scenario, if you cut, you lower taxes. Now businesses are hopefully incentivized to hire people who are laid off, because cutting $5 trillion of labor over 10 years is going to affect a lot of jobs. I mean, think about it. 10% of potential federal government workers, that's a lot. I mean, we've already heard they might consider getting rid of the Department of Education. Donald Trump's fluctuated on this one because he's had some ideas around, okay, well, if we get rid of the Department of Education, some states are still going to need help. Some states are better at education than others. California, by the way, highest tax rates next to Manhattan in the country, yet we're in the bottom 20% of schools. Schools need a lot of help. That's why when I ran for governor, I ran on the idea of, the premise, the plan of what we called future schools, trade schools, tech skills, a lot of financial education in our school. Anyway, so what ends up coming out of this plan is going to be, or this sort of DOGE, if you will, is going to be really interesting because it needs to be comprehensive. It's not just, all right, kill the FBI and kill the DOE. Fine. Who's going to pick it up? How are we going to establish something better? You can't just, as they said with healthcare, you can't just repeal. You have to repeal and replace. So how are you going to do that with the DOE? Do you then just provide more funding to the states? But then are states just taking that money and then hiring the same government workers that you had hired? And then you really didn't save any money because now you're potentially at a federal level giving more of that money to states, and it's still in the hands of government, really. You really haven't changed anything. So there are a lot of questions here. But I will say, if there's anybody who knows how to cut, it's Elon Musk. Because we saw what he did at Twitter. Everybody said Twitter was going to die and crash, and he cut 80% of the staff. And yeah, he had to hire some people back, which is a little embarrassing. But grand scheme of things, he did it. He pulled it off. So good for him. Like, awesome. He's riding a ship, and the platform's pretty dang good. I mean, obviously it's tilted a little to the right, but dang, it's a pretty good platform. I like it, and I support it. Right? I pay for the little yellow check mark, like $1,000 or $1,100 or whatever it is a month, mostly just because I want to support Elon. I want to be there for this cause. I'm a fan of free speech. I'm a believer. And then Vivek, he took RealVant public, and I think he's a great salesperson. I'm not the biggest fan of how they I can't remember what the drug was, but we did a whole video breaking down how they basically took a drug that was a failure, repackaged the marketing. They kind of knew it was going to fail, and IPO'd it. And then a lot of people lost a lot of money in that. So I wasn't the biggest fan of that. We have a separate video on that. But I think he's a very intelligent person, obviously speaks very eloquently. And I think him and Elon together, I think they're going to do great work, and I'm really excited to see what the recommendation is, but not just where the cuts. And that's the hard part about this. You can't just come in and say, cut. You got to also say, all right, are we now going to offset that by lowering taxes, grants to state governments? Where's that? The devil's going to be in the details on this one. But very interesting. So I have to say, like, if I had to put a little emotion on this, I'd say, feeling optimistic and kind of excited to see what happens. I'll put it that way. Anyway, if any of this gets you excited, make sure you sign up for the free alpha report. meetkevin.com/alpha every morning at 6:15 in the morning, in your text, in your email. We'll see you there tomorrow at 6:15. That'll be after CPI comes out, so it'll be entertaining. See ya. Bye.